In the last video, we see wife of Bath gracefully accepting that she had falsely accused her husbands. Now she accused her husbands of having affairs with other women, and while she was the one who was having an affair with this Jenkin, this apprentice, and she also charged her husbands of saying all the misogynist things like women would destroy her husbands, and there are three major griefs in the world, and the fourth is woman or wife. All this misogynist rants she was going through, and later she confesses that they were actually false accusations, and she said that when she accused her husbands, she said that they have told all these things in when they were drunk, and the wife of Bath also bear false witness in Jenkin and her niece. So we continue from there. This is lecture 15th. This section is called envy, payment and pleasure. So we continue from where we left off previously. Yet tickled this heart of him, for he deemed it was love produced such jealousy. I swore that all my walking out at night was but to spy on girls he kept outright, and under cover of that I had much mirth. And she uses a very interesting verb, tickled, and she says that there's these accusations, these false accusations and fights that she has had with her husband, as long as to accuse him of having affair with other women when he was sick and could barely stand. And she said that these were not a big problem in their marriage. It rather just tickled his husband's heart. So tickled is the word she uses. She says that all these accusations and misbehavior that she accused her husbands of, this was only playful tickles of the husband's heart, and she is trying to make this note lighter after the false allegations. And because she is not really in the receiving end of it, if we could have the narrative of her husbands here, so that could be different, whether they actually got tickled in their heart or this was something serious. But to her, that she is not in the receiving end of any of these things, she says that it only tickled her husband's heart. And she is only she has said in the previous sections that she is only saying her tale and this prologue to only please the other pilgrims with her story, and this is not to be taken seriously, and no one should actually get offended by it. And this was one of her narrative techniques, that she is not very serious. She is just playful, and she is just telling her story, and none should get offended and not take this very seriously. Now, her husbands believe that love produces such jealousy. Now, her husbands, they thought that wife of Bath, she was only very possessive about him, about the husband, and thus she was very jealous. A kind of jealousy that comes from love. When someone is in love, he or she becomes very possessive of the lover. So love has produced such jealousy. That's what her husbands thought, and the husband was happy that obviously my wife is so much in love with me. That is why she is jealous that I'm probably having. She is always suspicious that I'm having affair with other women. And wife of Bath says, all my walking out at night was but to spy on girls he kept. Now this is the version that wife of Bath told her husband, that she swore that she was only going out at night to spy on the women whom she thought that her husband is keeping some affairs with, having some affairs. And under cover of that, and in that way, she sneaked out at night and she had a lot of fun. I had much mirth, as she says. And she went out saying her husband that she's only going out to keep a check on the women who she thinks her husband is having affair with. But on that opportunity, when he got that opportunity and she went out, she herself had much fun. And this, of course, refers to her sexual adventures outside her marriage. So that's how she deceived her husband. For all such wit is given us at birth, deceit, weeping, and spinning does God give to women naturally the while they live. And she says that these talents like deceit, deception, false tears, and all the weeping and the spinning of stories, these talents come to women naturally and as if it is given by God, and women are born with it and they can do this all through their lives, as women are really talented in things like deceit and deception. And that's what she says, and she's boasting about it. And thus of one thing I speak boastfully, I got the best of each one finally, by trick or force or by some kind of thing, as by continual growls or murmuring. And she says that I speak boastfully. She is proud of these talents like deceit and deception and false tears that women have. And she is boasting them. And she says that she got the better of all her husbands, and how either by trick or by force, by deception and fake tears and nagging and complaining, these are only part of a scheme. Like previously in the previous section, as I said, that she is not at all sorry, she is not repenting that she falsely accused her husbands. She was not repenting, she was not sorry for the false accusations. Rather, she said that the false accusations were necessary for her to be on the upper hand, to be in a better position than her husband. And that is why she could boast. She boasts of these trickeries and force and deception. Especially in bed had they mischance. There would I chide and give them no pleasance. I would no longer in the bed abide, if I but felt his arm across my side, till he had paid his ransom unto me, then I would let him do his nicety. And she says that especially when it comes to bed, when it comes to sex at night, there she would bring all hell upon the husband. She would harass her husband so much that finally he has to give in. And she says this very proudly, that when my husband was in the mood for sex and initiated the romance, the husband initiated the romance, and she felt his arm across her side as if the husband is trying to initiate the romance in bed, and she would then threaten to leave when her husband is initiating the romance. Of course, the husband at night is horny and he initiates the romance, and then she says that I'm leaving, and she no longer in bed abide. She threatens the husband that she is leaving unless till he paid his ransom, then I would let him do his nicety. And she would threaten him that she will leave, she would not let him do anything, not let him touch her, and till she she says that till he played his part first. And ransom can either be wealth, because that was the part of a larger scheme, that she will give her body to the husband, and in exchange the husband will give his wealth to her. So ransom can either be wealth, or it can either be a sexual innuendo, because she said he had paid his ransom unto her. So it can also mean that unless he gives her the sexual satisfaction first, her pleasure comes first to her. That's what she says in the one of the previous section, that my pleasure is now important in sex, not only my husband's. So this can also be a sexual innuendo, this ransom. And if he could satisfy her first, only then she would let her husband have her and then satisfy himself. This she had done, this was her scheme. And therefore to all men this tale I tell, let gain who may for everything's to sell, with empty hand men may no falcons lure. And she says that everything in this world is for sale. Marriage is for sale, sex is for sale, everything, a relationship is for sale. So everything in this world is for sale, and everything has a price. To her, everything has a price and everything is for sale. And with empty hand, men may no falcons lure. When you come with empty hand, if you are poor, if you have no money, you cannot get anything in this world without money. So with empty hand, there's nothing for you in this world because everything has its own price. And of course, this brings to us again the theme of money and marriage, which is one of the very important themes, important question rather for this prologue. And she describes wife of Bath. She describes her nuptial life. She describes her married life in terms of trade and commerce. It's just a monetary transaction. It is rather a trade. Rather, it's not really a marriage where there is sentiment and emotion. That's what marriage is to her. For profit I would all his lust endure, and make him a veiled feigned appetite, yet I in bacon never had delight. And this is very serious. She says that for profit I all his lust endure, and she says clearly that it is only for her profit that she has slept with him. She only slept with her husband for money and for a well feigned appetite. She was never really attracted to the husband, the old husband. It was a feigned appetite. She had to pretend that she likes her husband and she desires her husband in bed. So her desire was not natural, it was feigned, it was fake, and she had to pretend that she likes her husband. And she says, in bacon never had delight. Bacon is obviously the old meat, well cooked old meat, and obviously this refers to her old husband. And she says that she was never really attracted to her old husbands. That is natural. Women of her age, when she was young, she couldn't have been any attracted to her old husbands. She was only there for the money. And then this brings us again in the theme of marriage as legal prostitution. And she sees money and wealth as compensation rather for her sexual distaste. And she was never really into the sex with her husband because her husbands were old and weak. They couldn't perform in bed, and she was never really attracted to them. She only feigned her appetite. She pretended that she likes them so that they give her the money. And that is why I used so much to chide, for if the Pope were seated there beside, I'd not have spared them, no, not at their own board, for by my truth I paid them word to word. And she says that is why I scolded them so much. She was always harassing, always scolding her husbands. And this she means that she was only there for the money, almost against her wish. And if you do not like someone, if a woman do not like someone and she is only there for the money, and it is the sex is almost against her wish. She was never really attracted to the husband, and the marriage and the sex, it was all very unpleasant to her. She was only there for the money. She was tolerating her husbands for the money, and that is why she used to scold them too much, because she was not satisfied and she was only finding ways to just get rid of the husbands. And she says that even if the Pope was there, I would not spare my husband, because she believes that I paid them word to word. This is what she believes, that she has provided sex and taken their money and property. This was her plan. This was a scheme. She has kept her word, and that's just enough for her. And she doesn't care about anything else. She was just keeping her word. So help me the true God omnipotent, though I right now should make my testament, I owe them not a word that was not quit. I brought it so about and by my wit, that they must give it up as for the best, or otherwise would have never had rest. And she says that if she makes her testament, even if the wife of Bath is making her last will, now she owes her husband nothing, that she has kept her word. She took their money, she has given them her body, and she has offered them the sex, and that's just it. She owes them nothing more. So even if she's writing her last will now, she owes them nothing. And she isn't any sorry for what she has done, because she's proud rather that she brought it about by her own wit. She managed to win over this argument. She managed to win over this argument called marriage because she was clever, witty, and tricky. It was her talents. Even if the talents are deceit and deceptions and trickery, it was her talent, and she managed her schemes well, and that is why she has won the game. And so she is not at all repenting about anything. She doesn't regret anything. They must give it up, otherwise we'd have never have rest. And she was so nagging and she was so complaining that she would never give up, even if it was necessary for her to do a false accusation, if it was necessary for her to use deception and deceit and trickery. She would use anything, but she would not give up. And she would not stop. She won't let this be over anyhow if she doesn't win. So her husbands, they have to give up at the end of the day. Otherwise, she won't leave them she won't leave them to have any peace of mind. For though he glared and scowled like lion mad, yet failed he of the end he wished he had. So she says that although the husbands, they looked at her like a wild lion, they failed actually to do anything, because they glared and scowled like lion. They only looked like lion, and they looked like wild lions. Although they only looked like wild lions, they lacked the vitality of the animal. And the husbands, they lacked vitality because they were old and weak, and she just mocks the old age disadvantage of the husbands. They were only glaring like wild mad lion, and they couldn't do anything, they couldn't perform. Then I would say, good dearie, see you keep in mind how meek is Wilkin, our old sheep. Come near, my spouse, let me kiss your cheek. And now, when the fight is at a climax and it's kind of going out of her hand, her husband is very annoyed now because she's been pestering and bargaining and complaining about the fight. She's nagging. It's going out of hand. Now she is trying to manage, she will try to manage the situation and make up for the fight and just change the topic. She is just managing the situation because wife of Bath, she is very shrewd and cunning. She knows how to manage the husbands. And now she would say, oh honey, look how meek Wilkin the sheep. So they probably had sheep called Wilkin, the old sheep, and she would just change the topic because now they were fighting in their marriage, and she just changed the topic to an old sheep. And she would say, come here, my husband, let me kiss you, because she's managing the situation, because she's aware that if her husband is too annoyed, he might just leave her without giving her any wealth. And that is something that she doesn't want, because all her scheme, all her pretensions, and all her tolerance of the wild husbands in beds were because she is after all only after their wealth. So if the husband leaves her, then she would not get the wealth anymore. So she now tries to manage the situation and calm things down. You should always be patient. Now we think that for a moment that she has calmed down, but she has other ideas. You should always be patient, aye, and meek, and have a sweetly scrupulous tenderness, since you so preach of old Job's patience, yes. Suffer always, since you so well can preach, and save you do, be sure that we will teach that it is well to leave a wife in peace. Now she says that, dear husband, you should always be patient and meek like the sheep, the old Wilkin sheep. You should be sweet, scrupulous tenderness. You should have this tenderness. You should have be patient and meek and tender. Because you are the one preaching this meekness and tenderness. You preach meekness and tenderness so well. So now it is your chance to be meek and tender. And actually, women, it was the women in medieval age who were supposed and asked to be meek and tender in a marriage and adjust in a marriage, however the marriage is. And now the woman, it's kind of a role reversal. The woman is asking her husband to be meek and tender, because it is always the husband who tells their wife, be meek and tender and do whatever I tell you, just be submissive. And now here the woman is telling her husband the same thing. Be sure that we will teach that it is well to leave a wife in peace. And wife of Bath says, or else if you don't be meek and tender like the Wilkin sheep, your wife will teach you that it is better to leave her in peace. So you either learn to be meek and patient, or your wife has other ideas. She knows very well. She knows how to teach you in other ways. She is so dominant because she has her husband under control. Wife of Bath, as she said, that she always had her husbands under control. And that is why she can threaten them. She can do all these things with them. One of us must bow to be at ease. And since a man's more reasonable, they say, than woman is, you must have patient eye. And to settle the scores and balance the marriage, one of us must bow. One of us must give in, and one of us, there should be one person in the marriage who should be adjusting, who should be more adjusting, and who should always give in, so that there is a balance in marriage. And it is always the women who are expected to adjust, it is always the women who are expected to accept their husband however they are. Here it's kind of a reversal. And wife of Bath said that since men are thought to be more reasonable, it should be you. You should be the one in our marriage. You should be the one who should adjust, because men are more reasonable, and both of these are things that are perpetuated by men. It is men who say to their wives that please be more adjusting and please be more accepting, so that there is a balance in marriage. It is also men who say that men are more reasonable and more scientific, where women are more sentimental. So both of these arguments that men use against women, wife of Bath is using against her husband. So it's kind of a whole reversal. And wife of Bath turns these patriarchal stereotypes. Both are stereotypes. It is women who are expected to be more adjusting and accepting. This is the first stereotype. And the second stereotype is that women are sentimental and men are reasonable. So wife of Bath turns these patriarchal stereotypes on their head. She just reverses it. And she uses a man's argument against men. And the stereotypes that men use against women, she is using very, very tactfully to her own advantage. And this is why this section is very interesting, because it's a very well-defined role reversal that the wife of Bath does. She is very shrewd and very cunning that she is doing this. What ails you that you grumble thus and groan? Is it because you have my cunt alone? Why take it all? Lo, have it every bit, Peter. Beshrew you, but you're fond of it. She says, why do you grumble and complain now? Don't you want to share me with anyone else? You want to have me alone. You should be the only person who have me in bed. That's what you want. So then take it all if you are so fond of it. Now she gives in because she is winning this argument against her husband. For if I would go peddle my bell chose, I could walk out as fresh as is a rose. But I will keep it for your own sweet tooth. You are to blame, by God I tell the truth. She is now giving in to her husband because she has to keep her husband sexually pleased and satisfied. Otherwise, her husband will not give her the wealth she wants. So now she says that you want to have sex with me, so be it, please have me. But she also reminds her husband that if she could choose her own partner, peddle my bell chose. If she could choose whoever she wants to have sex with, she would now be fresh and well off, fresh as a rose. And she reminds her husband that if she could choose who she wants to have sex with, it would certainly not be her old, unattractive, weak husband. It would be someone else who is sexually more vital, who has that vitality to please her. And if she could choose to have sex with anyone she wants, she would be as fresh as a rose. It is only adjusting from her part. It is only accommodating on her part. It is rather a kindness for her part to let that old husband, that old weak husband who cannot perform in bed, who lacks that vitality, to have her in bed. It is almost a kind, she says that it is almost a kindness that I am doing you. You are to blame, but I will keep it for your own sweet tooth. You are to blame, for by God I tell the truth. But she says that I'll still keep myself for you alone, because you want to have me alone. You don't want to share me with anyone else, and you are to blame, because if I do share myself with anyone else, then I would be called the bad wife again. That's what she says, and this is her argument. And this is how she dominated the marriage, and this is how she won over all the argument against her husbands. So that's it. This is this section. We'll continue again from the next.